So he turns into Venom form just to dance. Some would say it's his last dance.
Oh,
Ah! Oh, it hurts.
Hi, I'm Shamar Griffith.
And I'm Andrew Tejada. We're going through superhero productions to let you know if they're still fun or the hype around it was dumb on
Cape or Cap, a Black Nerd superhero podcast. Welcome to this week's installment of Cape or Cap, a Black Nerd superhero podcast. My name is Shamar Griffith, codename Comic Shams.
And I am Andrew Tejada, codename Arate.
Andrew and I have known each other since 1996.
That was the year that Venom, Tooth and Claw, /The Hunger released. And in Tooth and Claw, we had a combination of Venom and Wolverine, a crossover there. A crossover that thankfully did not happen in this year.
It was like Deadpool just rolled him and was just like, no, I have rights to him this year. You get him tomorrow.
Do you even have a universe, Sony? But but seriously, I would be terrified if those two had crossed over this year.
Yeah, I don't even know that. Gosh, I mean, I guess it would be a very mid movie.
It would balance out very good.
Yeah. You know who would love it? Thanos.
Yes.
Just like perfectly balanced. Yeah. Oh man, but speaking of terrifying things, today we are covering what we love on this show to do, a Calendar Man holiday special. Yes, he is back. He is he's not in the room with us right now. He unfortunately has invested in a lot of things since our time together on yet another DC animated podcast. I believe now he has like 3,000 interns. He's basically like mini Google or something. I don't know.
Oh yeah, he's trying to get daylight savings changed. We don't really know what the angle is, but that's taking most of his time right now.
But in honor of our connection with him, and he did request this of us, we are doing a Halloween special. Now, I know on the recording of this episode, it is after Halloween. So we're either late due to his issues with daylight savings time, or we're just in time for 2025 Halloween. Who knows?
Yeah, and you know, things are scary enough in the world, so this is releasing before the election. So I think it's still timely. It's still scary time.
Well, let's have some fun scary times. Because today we are covering the latest Venom movie. That is right, Venom 3. That's dropped in theaters in October. We are covering Venom: The Last Dance. At a runtime of 110 minutes, this 2024 film received a PG-13 rating. Still trying to figure out how.
PG-13?
All right, so we got this film was directed by Kelly Marcel. This is her directorial debut. Kelly wrote basically the entire film series, and today she is actually working with Tom Hardy to write out this final film in the Venom trilogy. And of course, as Cape or Cap standards, we do have the rating score of it already. According to Rotten Tomatoes, it currently has a 39% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics and 80% from the audiences.
So it's a popcorn fresh or whatever they're calling it now on Rotten Tomatoes.
I don't know. They don't know fruits and vegetables over there. All right. So now we got our cast list. We got Tom Hardy, who is returning for the third time now as Eddie Brock, or actually fourth time.
Mm-hmm. Fourth.
Yeah, we're going to count it for because of No Way Home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Eddie Brock is being played by Tom Hardy, who also provides the voice of Venom. We got Chiwetel Ejiofor, when he's not getting sidelined from giving Doctor Strange the work. Today, he is playing Rex Strickland. We'll get into that. Juno Temple of Ted Lasso fame is here today as Dr. Teddy Payne, and I will hold on to who this character ends up being. Rhys Ifans. Is that actually how you pronounce his name?
I believe so.
Okay. Well, either way, we didn't like him in Harry Potter after what he did as Mr. Lovegood. And we probably were a little upset about what he did in The Amazing Spider-Man when he kind of unalived Captain Stacy.
Yeah, not a great track record in terms of superhero movies.
No, but today we'll see what happens when he plays Martin Moon, which I will get into because the things that happened with this character and just the name in general in the Spider-Man lore kind of really upset me. Stephen Graham returns from the second film where he is once again playing Patrick Mulligan. I guess sorta. We'll get into that. Peggy Lou returns as Mrs. Chan. Clark Bacco makes her appearance as Sadie Christmas. I believe she is also a doctor in this film.
That's not her
And
name.
that is 100% her name.
Oh my God.
At least according to Wikipedia, the cast list, Reddit, the internet in general. You're shaking your head. I'm sorry for. I mean, look. If anything, this works as a double holiday special. We got someone named Christmas in here.
I guess so. Christmas came early.
And finally, he was the director of the second film of this trilogy. Today, he takes a step into the actual on-screen actions of the film as Andy Serkis plays the character Null, the creator of the symbiotes.
He's certainly there. Yep.
Things were filmed with him. All right, with that, let's see if this movie bonded with us in this Cape Cap review of Venom: The Last Dance.
So speaking of Andy Serkis, we start out with a hard cold open of we're just on some black inky planet. It looks pretty scary, honestly, not gonna lie, crawling with these creatures. And a guy, Noel, is just saying, hey, basically, I'm the scariest of all these creatures. They imprison me in this throne. But if I get a codex, we're not sly. We know you stole that from Man of Steel. He's like, but if I get a codex, I can get out of this chair I'm stuck in and then presumably like destroy everything. And apparently the people who rebelled against him were his creations, the symbiotes. So I hope you were taking notes because everything he said is extremely important to understanding the nuances of the plot. Although they explain those nuances 100 times. And after the CGI scene, we now go back to No Way Home.
Yeah, so if you never saw Spider-Man No Way Home, I mean, you may have enjoyed it, but if you never saw, well, actually also the second film within this Venom series, here's a quick recap. Eddie, at some point, due to the events of No Way Home, thanks to magic, gets teleported to the universe of Marvel universe, the MCU, which, although spoilers for Deadpool and Wolverine, is marked as Earth 616. Fans know that's not really the case. So let's just say, for all intents of this particular review, he is on Earth 616. He finds out everything, explains what's going on. He finds that there's a joke about how he's trying to explain to the bartender that aliens exist. And the bartender says, I know, because me and my family were blipped away thanks to an alien. And they're all confused as to why people know aliens exist. None of that matters because Eddie gets teleported back to his Earth, where once again, he meets a variant of this same bartender, now in a more rundown version of the same bar. And it turns into an extended sequence in which he is drunk, causing Venom to be drunk, causing Venom to do what I guess every single person who ever is drunk when they're at home with a bunch of liquor would do, and just create as many cocktails as they can figure out while also making the mess of the place. I mean, I feel like I've done that once or twice, but I feel like the way he was doing it, I would even want to clean that up.
Yeah, he wrecks the bar, which he thinks is his biggest crime, until he sees a television set where he finds out that he is being suspected for the murder of Patrick Mulligan. In the last film, during the battle with Carnage, Patrick Mulligan was impaled due to Carnage or Shriek, one of them. The villains did it.
They usually be doing it.
Yeah. At the end of that movie, from what I recalled, they ran away from the police after the Carnage battle, yet they're somehow surprised that they're being hunted by the police in this movie. I what how drunk are you guys?
You gotta understand that wasn't hungover Venom. That was pre-hungover Venom. We don't remember what pre-hungover does.
That's true. Um, so as they find this out, what they decide to do is leave a coin, a little change for the bartender to pay the damages. The coin has a little piece of symbiote on it. Also, Eddie is like, "Hey, I know what I should do to get out of this. I have some dirt on a judge in New York. I'm gonna go blackmail a judge in New York to get me out of something I did in Los Angeles, and I'm gonna get there from Mexico." Airtight plan, Eddie. I can't see any flaws whatsoever. But honestly, don't even worry about that because there's got to be a fight scene now.
Yes, because well, this leads into villains who are not connected to the plot in any way, shape, or form. Because Eddie, he comes across a place, a location where there's just unfortunately people who are holding dogs captive in the efforts of doing a dog fighting ring. They try and go to save the dogs. Unfortunately, at that moment, they come face to face with the people who are running the whole thing, and it turns into an extended fight scene of Eddie using the symbiote Venom. The two of them are working very well together, not in the typical sense where we've seen Venom use either in like Spider-Man 3 or any other animated iteration of Venom, or even going to say in Spider-Man 2, the Sony video game. Eddie uses Venom in a way where it's just like he basically uses him to push him off surfaces and to enhance his strength. So you see a lot of Tom Hardy just having black goo around fist or his legs to strengthen his attacks. And he's able to do all this to the point where he finally has everybody captured. And in a scene from the trailer, I guess it's like a joke to show that they're still trying to figure out how to work together, despite showing that they've worked very well together in this earlier fight. That they try to say the classic line of "We are Venom," but tend to go back and forth on the pacing, the timing. But that's all pushed to the side because obviously Venom was promised that if gets to fight bad guys, he could eat their heads, and that is basically what he does.
Yep, and he frees all the dogs that were captured. And in the distance, we see an alien following him, one of the aliens from Null's planet, who was promised that they would be allowed to live if they retrieved the codex that Eddie Brock has, apparently. Put a pin on that, because that's going to be important to rant about later. So hard cut again. This movie loves its hard cuts. I don't know what the editor was thinking. Just be as jarring as possible, I think.
I'm just gonna assume because there's like 15,000 plot points in this film.
Yeah, it's like, why even hide it? We cut to a dream of a young brother and sister on a beach talking about whatever, it doesn't matter. But what matters is that there's lightning on this beach. It's like the worst nighttime beach lightning storm I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's
no warning.
This is dangerous. Like I don't even know. Like this is like watching man-made global warming. Something like this is why I imagined it would look like.
Yeah. The lightning strikes the brother and sister. The brother dies, but the sister survives with an electric scar. Suddenly she wakes up and it's revealed she is a scientist who is working at Area 51. And there's just no easy way to transition from that. But not really, because she's really working at Area 55, the place underneath Area 51. And they're decommissioning Area 51 for some reason. And she works there because her brother really wanted to study aliens. And so she's like, since he's dead, I guess I'll just do his thing and not do anything independent. Also in a massive OSHA violation. There's an at Area 51, there is a just a vat of acid that just gets poured on anything they want to dispose of, just in the open, no walls, no cages, no gates. You just dump acid like where
There's no
anybody
barrier.
can. No barrier, no. There wasn't even a warning when it goes on.
Oh my god, yes, this is bad. uh wow. I never realized that. I did think it was weird that they were one using acid to just break down all these like large items just out in the open. Everybody could see. I know that like that whole raid on Area 51, that we were planning at some point back in the past. I feel like this would have been the time it would have been profitable for people. He may have gotten burned, but um but at the same time as we're seeing all this is when we see Baron Mordo, I mean the Rex Strickland pop through. He's running this team that basically supposed to keep the aliens from being seen by the people and destroying all their technology. But not quite like MIB because they apparently kill on sight. So I guess this is like a branch off of the Men in Black that just was more like, I guess, like the LAPD version of it. I digress. But we hear that they are also on the look for Eddie. He gets this order to go look for him from this shadowy figure, and they immediately start the chase where Eddie is just basically being followed scene after scene by soldiers who are attacking him at various points. Meanwhile, we also see that he's trying to do this journey to New York, Eddie is like now he's talking with Venom, and they're like, my life was so much different just about a year ago, which shocked me because I was just like, Eddie's looking kind of rough in this. Like, I'm surprised this was only a year.
Yeah, this has been a long year for you, bro.
Man, like he did a bit in Atlantean prison, yo. But this entire time, it definitely does set the stage of this being like the two of them are reaching what can be their final moments together because they're trying to figure out what this life look like for them for the rest of time. They know that they're bonded together. They know that they've had to sacrifice a lot. And unfortunately, they're in a situation where they're even worse off. So now that Eddie is trying to get back, he sees now, he's trying to figure out how can he maybe even like fly over to New York. Unfortunately, he does get attacked by Strickland's guys as they basically, I guess at one point, have an intense water fight that also leads to Eddie swimming with Venom.
Yes. So this is another editing thing. So right before this fight, I just have to. This is like we have a brief interaction with Strickland, who is talking to the scientist. He gets mad at one scientist for having a Christmas pin that her dead mother gave her. He's like, it's not Christmas. He's like, yeah, I know. My mom gave this to me. Jesus Christ, guy. I want to see his anti-Christmas movie. But he talks with Toxin, who apparently is the guy who. Oh yeah, Patrick Mulligan, the guy who was supposed to be killed in the last movie, didn't die. They had him on life support. They gave him a symbiote. All of this would have been really interesting to see happen instead of being expositioned.
Also, I'm really mad because technically this isn't Toxin.
Oh God,
this is not even the backstory of Toxin.
Oh well, you know what? I'm not that surprised.
Like you have all the rights to do it. Why not just make it so?
You gotta ask Sony. Toxin tells them basically because there was a point where Venom revived Eddie when Eddie was dead. That created a codex. That the codex could free Null. Sure. And so as soon as he finds this out, the General Strickland's like, I gotta go get him. Immediate cut to him doing that. Like what was the time? How much time passed between that conversation and him having the water fight? Um and in the water fight, the Venom and Eddie get temporarily disbanded, leading Eddie to have to fight a soldier and kill a soldier with his bare hands. And after they barely survived this fight due to intervention from the xenophage chasing them, Eddie is really devastated because during that fight, he lost his shoes.
To also add some insight to it, this was a running gag, I would assume, because
Yeah.
the shoes he lost were cowboy boots that he stole from the dog fighting ring because one of the dogs started chewing up his Crocs. And Venom suggested he wear the cowboy boots. So now, once again, Eddie has lost his shoes. But fortunately, he relies on the kindness of strangers during this existential crisis he goes through, where he meets the Moon family, a family of alien loving, I guess, very relaxed individuals, I would say. A father, mother, and two kids who are on their way to Area 51 after learning that the whole place was going to be decommissioned. Their hopes and dreams is to go there and find an alien and see one in real life. And Eddie, obviously, I don't know why, but I'm assuming just because he wants to keep a secret identity and whatnot, doesn't share that he actually has an alien with him. He says that like he believes in aliens, but he doesn't really think they're real, trying to like throw them off the scent of him or anything. I also assumed it was like an attempt to make sure that he didn't get caught by the police, but I'm just like, my guy, these people have been living in a camper for the last probably what looks like 50 years. I think you're fine. So as they're driving along, Venom is having this like there's a musical break. Not
Joker 2.
Yes. Fortunately, though, it's not as much as Joker 2. But we do have this internal monologue or dialogue between Eddie and Venom, where Venom is like, Eddie, you could have had something like this. I really wish that we had something like this. And he just wishes that Eddie could have had a better opportunity, recognizing, I guess, how much he has caused Eddie's life to change since this entire bonding experience that they had since the first movie.
Yeah, and it is a moment of really, well written self-reflection. Don't know what movie it's supposed to be in because it doesn't fit this movie at all. So they're on the trip and they eventually get to Vegas. And there's a very extended bit where Eddie tries to walk in with his dirty clothes, but he can't. So a guy pees on his feet, and he has to take the guy who pees on his feet suit. It just, things don't have to happen. Sometimes there are some scenes you don't need to show. In every movie, and this is all of them. So he goes into the casino, conveniently runs into his neighbor slash friend, Miss Chan. Elsewhere, Strickland, having so devastated after losing all those soldiers in the alien versus alien battle, gets authorization from a shadowy person whose identity we never discover. He's like, Strickland's like, can I use the 6? And they're like, yes, you have authorization for the 6. Now, I'm thinking in my naive mind, this might be a Sinister Six thing. Maybe they're going to pull together maybe for real Vulture or Morbius, I don't know. So we're gonna put a pin in that because Eddie goes back to Mrs. Chen's room because she's been winning a lot and she demands a dance with Venom. It is established the only way Venom can be seen by his alien enemy is if he turns into Venom form. So he turns into Venom form just to dance. Some would say it's his last dance.
Oh,
Ah! Oh, it hurts.
that. Oh gosh. I need to talk to everyone who was involved in the naming of this. If that is the case, you should be banned from cinema for at least 25 days after that. Obviously, because he's in venom form, he immediately I gotta say this creature, I think is called the xenophage or something like
Yes.
that. It's a pretty interesting creature, mainly because it's a giant like praying mantis with like a tree chipper in its mouth. So every single time that it will take any one of his victims, it will take it, bring it to his mouth, and it will just spray out the back. So it's intimidating. It's a very intimidating creature. I'll give it that. The most intimidating thing about it is because Venom's codex is Venom's codex shines so brightly. As soon as he goes on, it could be like 50, 100, 30,000 miles away. I don't know how big the Earth is, but it will always go and be able to find it. Somehow arrive 2 seconds later, even though it does not have the power of flight, teleportation, or super speed.
And also, it immediately stops when Venom gets out of his full Venom form.
Right.
But it's like if it just went the direction it lost
Right.
it probably would have gotten there.
Like it
But
just stops suddenly and it pisses me off.
yeah. But right before the xenophage can reach Venom during the dance where someone had to animate the CGI toes, I'm so sorry. Um, all of a sudden, the six show up. And you know who the six are? Regular goddamn guys. Because this movie doesn't know how to have fun.
Oh my God, this pissed me off so much because, well, I mean, they did it in the first movie, and we'll get to this, but it is kind of shown. But there is a point in Venom Lethal Protector, the comic, in which Venom has 5 symbiotes that he has to fight off against. It's one more number. We could have done something here.
Yep.
So now that Venom or Eddie Brock has to fight off against the 6 regular soldiers, they do get the upper hand. They are able to split Venom from Eddie, which causes the xenophage to not attack everybody for some reason. Instead, just runs away. They take Venom and Eddie into the facility where Eddie now comes face to face with Patrick Mulligan, or not Toxin. I'm not going to give him the credit of being called Toxin because I did like Toxin when I was a kid because I thought it was like a cool idea. My inner child would be very upset right now. So they talk about what happened, and they're like, we got to get out of here because he's coming. Null will be here. We got to make sure that Null doesn't get the codex that will free him. And all this is happening while, once again, Strickland is just very like dismissive towards both of the doctors. Doctor's Christmas. I think it is Christmas. I mean, the internet said it. I forgot about the pin. But I'll be tight if they just gave her a random name because of a pin. But Dr. Christmas and Dr. Temple. So at one random moment, after being berated by Strickland, Dr. Christmas just goes to a random person in the room and asks about family. And I still don't get why the question was made, because we had no understanding of who her character was in the entirety of this film. She was definitely treated as just like a second in command to Dr. Temple, who was getting crazy filmed backstory, but with no context. And if you thought Dr. Temple didn't have any context, neither did Dr. Christmas. So ultimately, she follows along to where the Venom symbiote is being taken down because it's revealed that they have 6 other Venom symbiotes in the facility. She follows down there, and then unfortunately, they are all attacked by a xenophage. And in order to help out, she somehow gets the Venom symbiote on her, turning into She-Venom, the second appearance of She-Venom in the live-action production, to help free Eddie, who unfortunately takes a bullet during the firefight. And thankfully, though, with Venom back in play, is able to get the bullet out of Eddie, helping him to recuperate.
Yeah. This is where the movie. Okay, I'll admit, it started to look a little fun here
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not gonna spend too much time on this because the movie didn't care to do this enough, but the alien family from before they arrive in the facility break into Area 51. They make a joke about child services should take the kids away, and honestly, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they should be separated from these from parents who break into Area 51 with the large acid pit. So the family arrives and at the same time the xenophage does. So they get their wish. They get to see an alien and realize it's horrible. Inside, in the chaos of the xenophage arriving, xenophage takes out a bunch of people, including Jim, who Sadie Christmas screams top of her lungs, "The Jim!" Who's had like one scene prior to this moment, but it's so played as this emotional moment. But luckily, Jim is brought back to life when a symbiote bonds with him, and we get a total of six symbiotes running around that have bonded with scientists that I guess they were close to. Even on the first movie, it was a real point that symbiotes just can't bond with anybody. Forget about that.
Yo,
Forget about
right.
it. The
I
whole
was like,
movie
the
was
whole
about
movie.
that.
Meanwhile, yo, you want a symbiote? Yo, we got you. Everybody gets a symbiote, like we on
Wee!
Oprah Marvel or something.
It was wild, and including a symbiote who like fused with another symbiote, so it could be a two-headed symbiote. I want that movie. I'm sorry, I'm doing it early. My arte alteration. I want the love story of these two symbiotes who, as soon as they found human host, fused into one body, Steven Universe style, just to
Yes.
cement their love, only to be savagely and cruelly killed after being ripped apart by a xenophage. That happens. There's no point in discussing it. Most of them die, including Jim.
Oh man, I love Jim.
The fire symbiote with the fire lash? I want to see that
Right.
movie too. That's my second arte alteration. What's that deal? Let me just follow that.
Can we just get a Venom 4? Like, I'm fine if it's not Tom Hardy, but we need either a Venom 4 or, I will say we're probably getting a little exhausted from so many television series that give like one episode per symbiote, but I want to see them come back. Like, you have just loose symbiotes out there who are just doing their own thing, and they have amazing abilities, more so that we saw with Venom. Like, in the first movie, he faced off someone who was basically like him. In the second movie, what was the plot? Oh yeah, Carnage. Like,
Yeah, his son. His son? Question mark.
his son. Right, right. You saw how Venom decided he was going to be an absentee father. But that's besides the point. We want to see the movie where it's just like, if you're going to expand the universe of Venom, especially with the universe of symbiotes, especially when you have, I'm assuming, all the rights because you're using a lot of the characters and have enough of them to create the actual comic book story that's connected with them. It probably will look a lot like Captain America Civil War, where, it was supposed to be a battle of superheroes and you just got five guys and his friends is beating up each other in a large airport. But we would have appreciated that if you just gave us the opportunity to see symbiotes in action.
And in action you do before they're all killed, except for She Venom and Venom himself. And they try a bunch of things, but ultimately the xenophages keep regenerating. Funny that these regenerating creatures are so concerned about Null killing them, because they seemingly can regenerate from any injury. So don't know what
Yeah.
they're so scared of Null. He's in a chair. Um, so at this point, Venom and Eddie realize there's really nothing they can do, and a bunch more xenophages show up, and they're gonna keep coming. And we know one of them has to die. At least one of them has to die to get rid of this codex. So Venom and Eddie agree to go in together. They draw in all the xenophages by expanding their body, and they start dragging their body to the acid pit. And at this point, when they get to the acid pit, um, Venom pulls an ejectocito cuz on Eddie and launches Eddie away into safety. I don't know if there's any safe zone near a pile of acid. Um,
Mm-hmm.
as proven by Strickland, who he was stabbed in the middle of this. It doesn't matter. They didn't give him no backstory or character. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Chiwetel. But since the acid pit does require a finger pit and iris, I read to turn on. Strickland turns it on while getting horribly burnt by the acid. But I do think the look on his face, while he was getting burnt by the acid, was probably the look on Chiwetel's face when he read the script and realized this was it. And yeah, and acid does its thing, and yep, and that's it. Bye, Venom.
Yeah. I will say it was a little touching scene where it was a little touching for me when Venom decides to shoot Eddie out to protect him and just take on all of the xenophages to burn them by acid, which I don't know how he figured that would work.
They hadn't seen the pit. They wouldn't know
Right.
it was there.
They wouldn't know it was there. I did think it was a little touching when I'm sorry, I couldn't keep a straight face on it.
Yeah.
Because the plot said so. This is why they would have just figured out that it was a vat of acid somewhere in the facility.
I do have an actual RTA alteration later about that, but we'll get to it later.
But I did think it was a little touching when Venom, upon saving Eddie and telling him to go live his life, he takes, like, you think he's going to try to rebond with him so that Eddie could like pull him back out, but no, he instead grabs a lead door. I'm assuming it was lead. I don't know what material is unable to stop acid from getting burned by acid, but he uses it to cover Eddie in a very calm way, like he tucks away a little kid telling them a bedtime story. And I can look, speaking of faces, Tom Hardy's face on that, to me, it was just like, why are we even doing this?
So after the acid sprays everywhere, Eddie wakes up. Eddie wakes up, tries to talk to Venom, but nobody answers. Just a random
Oh,
general.
no, we missed some random poignant scene for character closure or development for Dr. Temple.
Oh, sorry. How could I forget? Because she was struck by lightning. Yeah, in the middle of this, Dr. Temple is running away with Christmas, and they're about to die in the acid explosion. And she activates a symbiote that gives her like lightning powers, and she can run real fast, like the Flash. And it's late. It's late for this.
She also has cool long hair. So I'll give her that. She has...
Okay, yeah, but it's late. It's too late. That should have happened 10, 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
It's so random. And she doesn't come back before the end of the movie. That's it. That's the last you see of her. So good luck with that. Also, sorry, but Jim was mortally wounded, right? In the battle scene.
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't the Codex get created when somebody who's mortally wounded is brought back to life by Venom?
Yep.
Did Jim have a Codex?
We'll get into that.
Anyway, Eddie wakes up. Random General tells him, "Hey, guess what? Your crimes are expunged. Don't tell anybody about this." And we're all good. Eddie returns to New York City, sees the Statue of Liberty, and there's a montage set to memories. Bring back memories, bring back of the previous movies a little bit, but mainly this movie of flashbacks. Sorry, but Deadpool 3 already had a better and more emotional montage. I'm sorry, guys, you came in too late for that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And with that, like any 2000s, early 2000s film set in New York, we close out to a panning out shot of the Statue of Liberty done at a very fast pace, leading us to our credits where we see various animals who have been venomified. I don't think half of them actually appeared in our film here, but it was just cool to see kind of like the artwork. And of course, we get our post-credit scene. So we did see earlier in the movie that with the destruction of the Codex that was with Venom, Null seems to be like sent further away somewhere. Like he it just, I don't know, something happened. He's just in anguish, and it seemed like he was teleported away. Our post credit scene though does show that Null is alive and well. We get a better look at his face. It's a lot like the Dark Elves from Thor: Dark World. I'm sorry to bring up that movie. And he's saying that he is gonna make his comeback. I don't know how, because I mean, based off of just inside universes, I don't know if there's other ways, but also outside of your universe, according to the laws of like what legal rights Sony has versus what legal rights Marvel has, we're still in a bubble. And then we also get another final post-credit scene where we did see earlier that I am unfortunately forgetting his name, and I did not grab it for this episode, but he is famous from Ted Lasso as well, where he loves football. He was our bartender. He was taken into custody after Venom left his bar. He was taken in by Strickland. He somehow survives the entire explosion of Area 51 and Area 55, along with the attacks from the Xenophage. So he's walking out confused, all while we see the random little piece of Venom that was left behind and taken in by Strickland. The container it was in has cracked, and we see a little black bug making its way out, hinting at the possibility that Venom may actually still be around in some capacity.
Yep, that's it.
And
That's the last dance.
I'm actually kind of mad that they did Memories and not Last Dance. Like, Last Dance. Yeah.
We need somebody to pick songs and movies better.
Yeah. Yeah, James Gunn can't be the only one. Like, come on, like you got to have a proper DJ at any given party.
This year, this year in superhero movies lately sorely has needed one.
All right, so obviously, because we have gone through this, and we probably have already hinted from the way that we have talked about this, it is now time for our official rating. Andrew, for you, if you had to, now that you have given this movie the full rundown, is this movie a cape, or has it somehow turned into a venomous cap?
Give it the biggest venomous cap you have. My goodness gracious. The last two movies in this franchise were not great, but I had fun. And it seemed like everyone was trying to do something very specific. Venom 1, it was to, really change the tone of Venom, and retrospect, I can appreciate what they were trying to do there. In 2, Carnage was the main person, and they really leaned into Carnage. Their specific version of Carnage versus this goofy Venom really kind of worked somehow. But here, there is just nothing. There is nothing. There's no synergy between the goofy Venom and these really boring, flat scientist characters. Chiwetel is given nothing to do here, and that is a shame for an actor of his caliber. Juno Temple and Sadie Christmas are given, we only learn through them do exposition and the odd line, but truly I just don't know what their ultimate goal was of all this. Juno Temple's character says at one point that she wanted to follow in her brother's footsteps, and I get it, you did it. What now? What do you want to do? I don't have the answers to those questions. And Null sits in a chair. The main villain sits in a chair. We're following goons the whole time. Combined with really questionable editing, and just a lot of the fight scenes are really quick. They're really, really quick. Yeah. The plane fight scene was maybe less than 30 seconds. I don't know what was going on.
Also, did that plane crash? Because the Xenophage definitely went.
It should have. It should have. Not that we wanted that to see. Not that we wanted to see that at all. But the alien tore off the turbine of that plane. I don't think the plane is going to make it. I'm sorry. So there is. I don't know if the movie was chopped up, if there was intentions. I don't know what happened here, but I'll give, there's really nothing, no one quick fix, but I'm just going to drop an RT alteration that I can't believe even in this movie they didn't pull out. The entire time, the U.S. government is following Eddie.
Mhm.
They have video camera. They see he engaged with the family. Why didn't the government just capture the family? Bring them to Area 51. Because there's a scene with the fam where Venom saves the family at Area 51.
Oh, yeah.
And then Eddie and Venom are motivated to go and sneak in to break them out.
Mm.
On their way in, they see the acid pit, they see the
Mm.
pile of explosives, and it would make sense why they get captured in the facility where they have home field advantage instead of six regular ass guys. So that's the one thing I can't believe didn't do. It would not fix this movie by any means. It would not make it weird, less weird that the lizard is running around as a hippie in the Spider-Man universe. But man, this movie needed something and it just didn't have it. What about you? What do you think about this thing?
Oh man, like I can't agree more. This whole thing is a straight up cap for me. Like I have look, I there were times in which like I did enjoy seeing the unique fighting style that Eddie had with Venom. And maybe some lines work, a lot of lines unfortunately did it. But the main issue that I have with this entire movie is that it basically overhyped the conflict and then failed to deliver on it. We have Null, who is sharing his deep, deep connection as the the creator of the symbiotes, and he is warning that he actually is on his way. Like we've had two movies and seeing how symbiotes have been such a dangerous threat to the planet in their own various ways, not knowing that it was actually Null who probably could have been pulling the strings this entire time, and then have it be like, oh, well, Null actually sent these things down and he's actually against them. So it's just like, okay, great. We have the symbiotes who have caused chaos, but then you have something that already hated them, and then he's even a bigger threat, and he just sits in the chair the entire time. You're right. We're just like dealing with goons. He just serves as the boogeyman. Like even in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, you had the boogeyman of Kang giving Ant-Man the work. Paul Rudd took hits to the face. You mean to tell me that Tom Hardy couldn't take one from Null at any point during this movie? It was supposed to be his last movie as Venom. And the other issues I saw was that, we usually in cases like this, I would love to just like overlook that. Like, hey, like you are setting up for a bigger story. You're setting up for a bigger adventure. Like we dealt with Thanos having to spend like almost half a decade for his buildup before we finally saw him in action. And I would have been fine if that was like we had that buildup, but then the rest of the story was great. The entire movie there's only one returning character, and that's the main character. This is the last film, and you couldn't bring anybody else back from the last two movies except for Patrick Mulligan, who completely changes the dynamic and the demeanor of the character he previously played. So that, and then to have it be that you're introducing characters like Dr. Payne and Dr. Christmas, I also agree. Like it just felt like they're thrown at us and given to us as if they are people who we should have known this entire time. But now you're spending every other 5 seconds trying to make it look like they actually matter to us, actually care. Like honestly, take out all the stuff with like the reason why they showing the whole scene of her getting electrocuted and the death of her brother. Don't include that line from Dr. Christmas about the sense of family if we're not going to build on that entirely in some way, shape, or form. Like it just feels like they were given some really big poignant things, but they never actually dive deep onto them. So now they just feel like, oh, you're just here to bond with symbiotes, and that's it, to make cool looking symbiotes, which, granted, these are symbiotes from comics, but they're also not the individuals who were bonded with these symbiotes to even begin with. These are brand new creations. So that's why I'm upset about that. Also, the moons. Look, I don't know why they were really in there. So I don't really have notes about them
Yeah.
because I don't have the bandwidth or willpower to write out, because this movie definitely didn't. But the one thing I am upset about with that is that you can't use the last name Moon in Sony's Spider-Man universe and not connect it to Cindy Moon, who is Silk who honestly, in my opinion, should have been a bigger character than Spider-Gwen. I'll say it as is because it was an original character. It was a character who had a connection to Peter Parker, not in an alternate reality universe, in the main universe. And unfortunately, this is just one of the many times that her Cindy Moon's character gets failed. And I don't know if the intention was to say that like this kid, the oldest daughter, was supposed to be Cindy because they definitely didn't call her that.
I think maybe it was, but then the receipts from Madam Web came back and they were like, let's not do that.
So just go with it. It's the last movie. Who even cares?
I'm also in the middle of it. What you were saying, because 100% right that all across the board, there's no recurring characters, so it really makes it jarring what Eddie is fighting against. So if you're gonna do new characters, another alteration I'd make, have Null possess Strickland.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole time when it would make sense later on when it's like, why does he hate Christmas randomly? It's actually because it's Null. He does not care about human holidays. All he wants is to capture Venom. And if that would have been revealed at the end, that Strickland and Null were fighting for control, and Strickland ultimately is like turning off the acid, sacrificing himself at the same time Venom is, you might have had been cooking with a little bit more gas, you know?
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't have been as pissed that the six were regular guys. Though I'm still gonna be upset about that. But it just feels like the first two, for all their flaws, had creativeness, had flair.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know where it went. I
Yeah.
don't know where it went for the third one.
Yeah. Ultimately, this movie just earned the first half of Venom's moniker because it was lethal watching this after being so excited for a proper, not saying great trilogy, but enough that will make us know that, like, hey, you would have gotten your accolades for the work you did.
Yep. So for now, Guardians still reigns as the best superhero live action trilogy. Don't at me. It's true.
But before we hop into the comic book section and why I don't know why this movie didn't, an explanation of why this movie didn't use most of the lore that is associated with it. Anything we should be mindful of something behind the scenes that could have affected why we saw what we saw?
Yeah, it's still very sparse because the movie just came out, but I can give you three quick things. One, Andy Serkis was the director of the second movie. People were curious why he couldn't return. He's actually directing Animal Farm, an interpretation of Animal Farm, something you
What?
probably read in, school.
Oh, I
Um,
read and watched that movie.
yeah, he's doing a new one, so he didn't have time to do both. Um, that's why
If
he
this
didn't
movie ain't a
return.
banger, I'm gonna be so upset. Like, I need this movie to be like 15,000 Academy Award winning nominations or something.
Please. And Kelly Marcel, who has directed TV but never a full-length film, but had a hand in writing every Venom movie, stepped up. And I don't really want to put this all on her because the
Mm-hmm.
edit of this movie is truly terrible. But I don't know what the thought was behind putting a first-time director to helm the end of a trilogy. Not really sure what the thought was. Um, Deadline Hollywood said that some of the underperformance of the movie could be blamed on the World Series game between the Yankees and the Dodgers, which I think is a cap in itself. And in about 3 weeks, you'll be able to see this on Netflix because I think that's how long it's going to last in theaters.
Also, as a Yankees fan, listen, we already hurting. Don't put Venom on us. Like, yo, that's rude. Oh man. All right. Well, I mean, choices were made. I'm glad to see that we hear really that there's a reason behind some of the stuff. I'm wishing Andy Serkis the best with this Animal Farm movie. I'm hoping that Kelly Marcel does not take the the unfortunate reviews that this movie is receiving as any insight into her work, because obviously you were already knocking it out the park as the writer for these films. We were enjoying that you were creating wonderful content, and we understand especially that like one person could put together the work, but unfortunately, many other people will have input who will force that opinion on the process and everything. So, and again, do not blame the Yankees for what happened to Venom. We are still hurting. That's I'm gonna write a strong letter to whoever try to combine that, because the World Series, yes, while it happened in the same weekend, those only happened at nights. Okay, you had the better part of the day to go see this movie and help with its performance.
Yeah, if you didn't want to see it, yeah, you didn't want to see it. And also, studios, don't blame superhero fatigue. This movie's just bad. Okay? Stop it. Stop it. All right?
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to blame superhero fatigue on anything, it probably would have been Joaquin Phoenix, because he was probably just tired of the superhero stuff, and that's why he gave a poor performance for Joker too. But that's
Yes.
but speaking of superhero fatigue, obviously we have to hop on over to the inspiration for all this stuff, and that is the comic section of today, which I am going to be calling Null and Void, which is what Andy Serkis's presence as Null was in this entire film. All right, so I will admit that this movie does take a lot from the Venom lore. Obviously we have Venom, obviously we have symbiotes, as well as the introduction of Null, who has been in comics now for the better part of the last 6 years officially, though Marvel did seem to be trying to build stuff on the back end to help bring him into the scene. But he officially came out in 2018. But before I talk about Null, I do want to point out some of the stuff and some of the big changes and some of the Easter eggs that might have come up in this film. As I mentioned, Patrick Mulligan is taken over by a symbiote. It's not this ghost-like figure that we saw in the film. It actually just looks like a melted version of Carnage, and that is because it is the son of Carnage by the name of Toxin. And the other thing too, because every symbiote since Venom has had, or Carnage has had daddy issues, Toxin hated his father, so he decided to team up with his grandfather Venom to finally take down Carnage. And in the comic as well, Patrick Mulligan is a cop who unfortunately passes in the line of duty, and when upon bonding with the symbiote, the two of them become I guess, like lethal deputized protector.
Hmm. Which that would have been cool.
Yeah. I mean, just you're kind of wasting people behind the scenes here. These cages is saying. Next up, Dr. Teddy Payne. There is another character in Marvel history that does not have any connection to Venom whatsoever, and that person goes by Thaddeus Payne. So this is a brand new creation, I'm assuming. But the symbiote that she uses is not new. This is the symbiote that goes by the name of Agony. And as far as I could tell, though, the super speed is new. Everything dealing with the electrical powers, all brand new. In fact, the name she was first introduced in Venom Lethal Protector back in 1993. However, she didn't get the name of Agony until much later, when she was a part of a strike team that consisted of about 5 to 6 symbiotes.
Wait, that doesn't sound like 6 guys. It sounds like 6 aliens.
Yeah, it was six soldiers who actually got symbiotes placed on them.
This is you're going too fast. I just can hear guys, 6 guys. That's it.
Also, speaking of Dr. Payne, we also had Sadie Christmas, who did become She-Venom for a bit. So we do get a chance to see that reappearance since the first film, which is also in the comics. But more importantly, she bonds with 2 symbiotes during our film today. The second one happened to be Lasher, a green symbiote who has knife-pointed tendrils that come out, and we got a chance to see that in action. Definitely more lines in this movie that I feel like Lasher's ever gotten in any comic book story. Other appearances that we did see were Phage. I believe this was the character Jim. He got the Phage symbiote, which is another popular one amongst symbiote fans, and a hint of Hybrid, which was when all the 5 symbiotes, the children of Venom that were released in the comic Venom Lethal Protector by David Michelin and Mark Bagley back in 1993, fused together to create a 5-headed hybrid symbiote, which would have been, I assume, the 2-headed symbiote that this movie tried to put together, but I guess budget was an issue. So yeah, all these names, we wouldn't actually get them until like 20 years later in another Marvel Future comic where they had to face off against Carnage. But let's talk about the granddaddy of them all, Null, who was first introduced in Venom comics, but he got his full origin story revealed in issue number 4 in 2018, written by Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman. Now, I gotta say, reading through the Null comic, especially the introduction of it, I this was my first time kind of going through it, so I'm still reading through it. But from the big event that he had about the King in Black, which was the summer event that took place back in 2020 from across Marvel Stories, Null explains that he was basically the only being in the universe back in the day, since its existence. It was just him and his kingdom, the Void, aka space. He was just floating around aimlessly, doing his own thing, until one day the darkness of his space was interrupted by a bright light and the gentrifying force of the Celestials.
Damn it. The lattes are going to be more expensive.
So, with their presence, they brought light and new worlds that occupied his space. So, in a fit of rage because he's losing his property, he takes the shadow that is being casted from his body and pulls a blade out and uses that dark blade to cut off the head of one of the Celestials. And I'm glad that you brought up Guardians, because that, my friends, is how Guardians of the Galaxy got their home of nowhere.
Ah, okay, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sharp blade guy.
Now, Null will turn this into a 1v20 plus against the Celestials. And unfortunately, he does lose this battle a little bit. And they banish him to the World Forge, which we saw in Avengers Infinity War, where Thor would make Stormbreaker. But Null obviously did not hear no bell. So he spent his entire time in the Forge working and building a new weapon that he can use against the Celestials to take back his kingdom. And that is how we got the proto symbiote. This was a being, but more so like an armor and a weapon that he can use to morph onto his body and conjure any weapon that he ever wanted. And as Null recounts the story of how he created it, he tells the story of how he was injured during this battle, so he unfortunately wasn't at his full potential. So during this time, he had to use the fire that was from the forge and the heat and the hammering of the celestial hammer that he stole to enforce his will onto the proto symbiote, leading to this proto symbiote taking on weaknesses from both fire and sound, which will then be transferred down to his descendants.
Okay, ties together nicely.
Mm-hmm. Now, with this new weapon, it's round 2, but another defeat. Not as bad, though, because as Null is recovering on a nearby planet, he realizes that the suit that he has can put itself onto any other smaller animal, and this proto symbiote will create an offspring that will create a symbiotic relationship with a lesser being, and this created the first Venom-like host, this first symbiote host. So with that, he took his time, he grew his power, influencing and putting his will with the proto symbiote to create more symbiotes, and ultimately it will lead to him even creating a symbiote dragon, which honestly looks so freaking cool if you ever check it out in the comic. This dragon, though, caught the attention of Thor when it was antagonizing some people, and Thor defeated the creature, and it was such a sounding defeat that it snapped the control that Null had over all the symbiotes that he created, because with the proto symbiote, he was able to create a hive mind and force his will onto them. And this is where we get like kind of like that explanation in the movie where he was then the symbiotes now, but in a more, obviously, because the comic provides a bit more detail, the symbiotes, after bonding with so many beings who wanted to do good, they also created their own sense of good. And they realized that their master was putting them on a wrongful path. So they bonded together, went after Null, and took him down in this huge battle where they locked him in a cage, similar to what we saw here. And this also, I also want to say that Thor would not face off. This is not the last time that Thor would end up facing off against like a creature of Null or some kind of byproduct of Null, because the same armor that Null had, the same blade, the same thing he used, would find its way into the hands of a being that would slay, or some might say, gore a god.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. So all this time, the aftermath of Null's presence is echoing through the Marvel universe between Thor versus the God Slayer, the location of nowhere, how it was created. And then now this is where we see that the symbiotes have locked away Null in what was more recently explained, the planet of symbiotes, which was called Clintar. But we learned that Clintar is actually not a planet. It is actually Null in the middle, and thousands upon thousands of symbiotes just swirling around, keeping him locked in and preventing him from moving. And Clintar is actually their word for cage. So now that we have that backstory, we do get the creation of the Null's kind of like rise to power. He does break free, but the codex issue, this is the thing that is very confusing in this movie. So I'm gonna try to see if I explain it quickly, because it does play out more so in the King in Black. But once again, yes, if a symbiote saves its host from dying, it does create a codex. And it's not just Venom as is shown in the movie. Codexes are very basically, it's like playing Pokemon and just like happening on the Caterpie in the very first stages of after you leave Pallet Town. So there are thousands of codexes, but each one is a separate key, and as many keys as you can collect leads into Null being able to escape. So that is why, even though they kind of hyped it up like it was like Null was going to be able to free himself after just defeating Venom one time, in reality he would need several symbiotes in order to do this. And even speaking about Venom, the name actually comes from the fact when Null was fighting against the symbiotes, he says they've been infected by a virus or even a venom. So that's why Venom is the more popular symbiote within the Marvel universe.
Even though Lash Guy, Fire Lash Guy, I'm voting for him.
Yeah. So yeah, that is it. Null, I'm actually pretty impressed with the story that they crafted for him in the comics, especially because of the fact that he has such a strong connection to some of those unanswered questions that we've had in the Marvel universe. And then eventually his hand in not only the creation of certain villains or spaces, but also like the fact that he killed the Celestial, which I know that Marvel has been toying around with now. I don't know if they are still, because I know the Eternals 2 is no longer on the block.
A lot of things aren't.
But I'd be shocked to see if Null is going to be a bigger character in the future, and if it's going to be a Sony production or if it's going to be a Marvel production, especially because they're at the right moment right now where there's no real villain. Like, we're just relying on, the phase out of Kang, and then hopefully Doctor Doom, now played by Robert Downey Jr., becoming the thing, which I don't know if it will. To be honest, I don't have that much confidence that this version of Doctor Doom would be as big, because, there's only really two, like, he's a great character in the comics, but it'd be very hard to introduce someone who doesn't have we have Thanos, who has such a rich history with the things going on behind the scenes. And until I see something with Doctor Doom happening with that in the Marvel universe, I feel like Null should really make this hop over, if the plan is for him to hop over to the Marvel universe as soon as possible.
Or they'll put him in Spider-Man 4 during the multiverse, as was the
Yeah.
plan all along. Not really.
All right. So with that wraps up the comic book knowledge. That also wraps up our episode. Any final thoughts about Venom 3: The Last Dance?
Sony, just stop, please. Please.
Yeah.
Look, we get it. We get it. The money is great. But come on with these movies, man.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not going to try, stop doing it. All right? We'd rather never see these characters than you do this every 3 months. Please. Please stop.
Yeah, it's just work on the working conditions of what we've been hearing about the working conditions for the Spider-Verse movies and just give us the enjoyment that we know could be a great film and don't have to worry about feeling like you have to check every single box for every single person. Just make your story. We will find ways to enjoy it. Same way we did with our first two films here. All right, that wraps up our episode. Be sure to support us either through a one-time gift on Buy Me a Coffee or monthly through Patreon. Check us out on our socials for updates on our episodes that you can find across Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or many other platforms. If you ever want to reach out to us, be sure to either send us a DM on our social medias, or you can also reach out to capeorcatpod@gmail.com. Take care of yourselves, and remember that, I guess if you got some kind of trauma, just follow the advice of Dr. Christmas and Dr. Temple, because 90% of the time, taking on a symbiote might just solve that somehow.
And if your job involves you working near a pit of acid that is outdoors, quit. It ain't worth it, because you're going to get burned by acid. 100% guaranteed.
Thanks again for listening. If you liked what you heard, press that follow button and share us with a friend. And don't forget, you can always see more updates and content on our social media accounts just by searching @CapeOrCat.